Hello, this is Plain Air. Welcome back. And we're just chugging along, chewing on this artist train. That is a doggy in the background.
We're your hosts, AJ and Sally. Today's guest is Pearlyn Lii, an interdisciplinary artist and designer whose work explores the very human experiences of pain, loss, and kinship. Video game, animation, augmented reality, and performance art are just a few of the mediums that Pearlyn has used to express her creativity. This is not someone who's afraid to dive into new and uncharted territory, and we were lucky to have her.
Pearlyn is a really great friend of mine, and the main reason I wanted her on the pod is because she's an example of someone not allowing conventions to limit her. Her journey as a creative has weaved and flowed and evolved in a way that I find incredibly impressive. There is no set path, and I think that's a really important mindset for anyone to have, not just for illustrators or creatives. So without further ado, here's our talk with Pearlyn. Hello, Pearlyn Lii.
Hi. Wow, so formal.
I know it's the first couple minutes of this is always a little bit like weird because like even if we're chatting with friends and whatnot, it's awkward recording and stuff. Wait, but Pearl, you know AJ, right? Have you guys
We
met?
might have met
Maybe during
once,
school, yeah.
maybe once during school at art.
I'm very aware, very big fan.
Oh my god! And okay, likewise. Okay, now it's recording. Okay, we're recording. So I've been meaning to say this for a very long time, but I read In Waves many years ago. I got my copy, and I'm going through it, and my week is going fine. And then I reach the end of this book, and like someone's probably cutting onions in the other room because my copy is like all warped from just my tears on it, and so it's such an impactful piece of work. And anyway, I think about it every now and then.
Dude,
So,
thank you, Pearlyn. That's so sweet of you to say.
My gosh, such a great book. And Sally, you've been doing so many amazing illustrated novels and books. I can't even keep up because you're always doing amazing things. So,
Blah, blah, blah,
big
blah.
fan. Big fan
Thank
over
you.
here.
Well,
It's nice
I'm
to
a big
talk to you.
fan.
You know, like I don't think we've formally met, but like your name rings bells in the street. Like whenever you come
Yeah,
up, it's
you
like,
too.
oh snap, Pearlyn's doing it.
You're the first person who is not an illustrator. Like the first person we interviewed.
Yeah.
And it's so important. And I think you are a very good example of someone who is very open to collaboration, who has a lot of drive and interest in fields outside of your experience. Like I know you through Beverly, who's another art center illustrator.
Yep.
But I think we became really much closer because of you just like hung around us a lot. Like, not in a bad way, but like during like lunch. Yeah. Like even outside of like the general ed classes, like when there was a group of us just hanging out in the cafeteria working, like you just join us and be like, "Hey, you guys, what's going on?" And you were always very interested in everyone's work, and you would talk about like other design fields or influences that interested you. And I was always admiring that about you, that like you, whereas with illustrator, especially illustrators, we tend to be a little bit insular. We tend to be very introverted, afraid to step out of our little bubble.
It's interesting, right? Because collaboration to me is like a way to make friends. Like friendship is kind of first and foremost such an important pillar in my life. And there is some, and separately, if we're talking about being insular, I mean that's a lot of great work comes in being able to click into yourself and and unearth kind of a lot of and process a lot of different like emotions and trauma. And I feel like that is the beauty of artistic expression, right, at the finest. And so, but they're kind of these two opposite poles that like I always strive to balance, is the insularity and like the friendship aspect. And I feel like there is something so nice about being able to collaborate on work, because you're literally just hanging out. Like, you enjoy the person's company, and of course they're going to come with amazing ideas, because like we're kind of in the comfort of a safe space together, and we're just like hanging out like we would, like I see a lot of my illustration friends like going to a cafe, sketching like together and just hanging out. Like, that's a form of bonding. But I see that in the same way when I collaborate. It's like a space for creating work together, which is probably like the most beautiful expression of friendship in a way. And there's like, it's so, some have so many mentors that are like, oh, you should never work with a friend, like, because there's always like tension or transaction, or like there's like something in there. But I kind of take a very kind of opposite approach to that, if you will, like an antithetical approach to that, where like, don't you want to surround yourself with incredible people and to make work together? Because ultimately, most of our lives, we do commercial work for random people, right? Like, you never really met them other than in the work context, and you don't get to really choose sometimes who you work with. And so the beauty of collaborating is like being able to kind of live a fulfilling life on this planet, to be able to choose the people you want to spend your very precious time with.
Ooh, preach.
No, that's a really good point, in that, sure, I could see why a mentor would say like, don't work with friends, because you're kind of mixing some, with sometimes business can get a little icky and
Yeah.
complicated. I think that's only if you approach every person and every project with like the same approach, because everyone's different. So there should always be like flexibility, or like the person you choose, you should also be aware of how they will adjust, or, and I think you're very good at that, in matching like the person's energy and seeing what they would need or what they are able to do. And then you can kind of readjust what you expect, or what your expectations would be for yourself in that project.
Yeah, I mean, because collaboration is such a vulnerable space, actually, because, without, let's say, you're just kind of hanging out in a party, whatever, there's no kind of pressure really to fully express yourself. Like, you can come to that party and at whatever kind of like level of presence you want, but when it comes to collaboration, you actually have to be like engaged, and when you're engaged, ultimately, and if you're creative, you're vulnerable. And so like, to me, it's always about making sure everyone feels ownership in the collaboration, because otherwise it's more like a commission, which is not what I mean, sometimes that's awesome, but really, to be able to have people fully express themselves in a part of your practice, that's true collaboration. And it's the most fulfilling thing. I feel like it is a sense of kind of chosen kinship in a way. Like, there's very few, I think, spaces that allow for this type of I don't know, like closeness and like and vulnerability. So anyway, I feel like this is a very sacred space, for sure.
I agree with that. I feel like when you're with people that are open to your ideas, you feel respected, you feel validated, you feel safe, you feel protected. Like, a lot of my best work has been collaborations with friends, and it's usually with no like monetary goal at the end of it. It's just like we feel like making something together, and it's so much fun. Like that. Like you nailed it when you said it was fulfilling, because I think that's that's what's the most rewarding for me, is doing that with friends.
Yeah, and it's interesting because there's a part of us that, like, yes, we need to make money to like be commercially viable, but then there's also the other end where like this to me is just way more valuable than any monetary means. Kind of unlocking this kind of like golden space in which like everyone can really be themselves. It's like you don't really get that opportunity really unless you cultivate it.
Let's take a little step back and let's talk about your beginnings a little bit, because I think that's also very important. And just,
Yeah.
I mean, you can go as far back as you want, but like I want people to know where you come from, or how you've come to that mindset.
Yeah. Well, I come from my mother's womb. That's really important. That's important to the practice. It's important to
Yes.
a lot of different things in my practice. But really, you know, it's a lot of my new media work is inspired by my grandmother. She is 110 right now. Today, not right this moment. She's 100. Yes, she's 110. She's still alive.
No way. Amazing.
And you know, there's something that is to be said about, you know, she's seen all the world wars, she's seen the Vietnam War, she's seen a lot of history, and she was the one that also opened me up to various different stories. And so did my mom, and like, you know, just so many different women in my life have, you know, exposed me to stories that I wouldn't be hearing if, you know, going to school in America. And but I think the most important story that my grandma told me, or my mom told me, that was that my mother was adopted in a community of orphans in Xiamen in the south of China. And so actually, I'm not biologically related to my grandmother, which is to me a really big deal, because she lives this model of, again, chosen kinship. Like that's been her mission pretty much. She's raised many generations of people that were not related to her. And I think that is something that's I wanted to kind of capture in my practice, because it's a very it's a story that's kind of untold, right? It's like these stories that happen kind of in silence. Like she you know, had to do this as a woman in, I don't know, 1910, 1914 and on. And, you know, it's something that I felt like what my practice could kind of continue on that legacy is, could kind of tell all these different types of kind of archetypal stories about matrilineage, to kind of continue her legacy in a modern and kind of mythological way. And so anyway, that's how kind of all started in terms of my art practice. But in parallel, I'm also a designer, and most of my kind of day job is around designing exhibitions for museums, and being able to translate, you know, untold narratives into a space. And so I really, my kind of day-to-day is a bridge between these two worlds. It's either, you know, designing for museums or like exhibiting, not in museums yet, but, you know, in gallery spaces. And so I think that bridge is super important and the crux of my practice.
From my own experience in making illustrations for, or making commercial work, versus making work for myself that could potentially be in galleries or whatnot, I find that it's not that easy to switch between modes. I'm curious how that is for you.
Yeah. It's not easy to switch gears, I think, in general. That's true, and kind of like a day-to-day. But what has worked was when I think about it in the long-term sense, like I think about how when I'm doing new media work, that type of work is then inspiring the design work. And then the design work, telling narratives in a space is really important to like being able to stage like a gallery and a show in a gallery, because there's some sort of narrative as you walk through the space. And so I think the two, yes, it's true. In the day-to-day, it's like, whoa, like having to kind of like switch between Slack, which is like the commercial side, and then like switch to Discord, which is like the art side, and like talking to all my collaborators there. But ultimately, like they both complement each other. Like you don't want to spend so many hours like working for capitalism, and then you don't want to spend and I don't think you want to kind of be in this insular space forever either. So actually the two work very, I think, well together, but ultimately I think it takes like a lot of time to cultivate how to distribute time between the two. That's the art. That's like another kind of art that is like a silent art, that
No, that is, I mean, completely true, especially what you said about it complementing one another. Because I find that when there is like a really good balance, that's like the best I can hope for. Because my commercial stuff that work, even like when I work on kids' book and whatnot, and just reading the words of other people and seeing like, I mean, I know it's commercial, but like that is also a different kind of collaboration.
Yeah.
And it affects what and how I approach my own personal work as well. So
Absolutely. Yeah, I think there is like a courtesy to be able to be empathetic enough to translate someone else's story, because basically what you're doing is like you're practicing how to also express your own story. And so you kind of get like it's important to have the mileage. Like it's important to do it a lot in the commercial world. And you kind of have this like kind of, there's a little bit of a safety net, I guess, in that way, where you can like fail over and over again, kind of in the commercial sense. Don't quote me, capitalism, but like you can do that so that when it comes to really honing down on your own kind of work, there's kind of this years of experience kind of at the pen, when you get there. And that's the beauty of it, I think, is honing in the craft many times.
We're fascinated by your journey because, you're an accomplished designer in your own right, but we also want to know, like, was there a moment where you decided to journey on the path as an artist more so than a designer?
Yes, definitely. So it was after my, I had moved to New York, and, this is after school had happened in LA. I moved to New York for my first job, which I thought was my dream job. And, then I kind of ran into a lot of, there's like a dissonance kind of between what the commercial world looked like as described by other people when you're in school versus like when you actually get there, and you realize just kind of how many webs and you have to kind of go through. And I felt like it wasn't like this kind of creative kind of it's not like a creative space to be in necessarily. Right. And there's a lot of, I would say, like a business-minded track of thinking when it comes to it, because I don't know, a lot of people at this point are like in hundreds of thousands of dollars in student debt. And then it's like, well, actually the least creative jobs would get you out of that debt. And so it became this kind of like chasing of that. And it wasn't enough about the work itself, which is, I think, what every, disciplinarian, every creative person wants. And so I felt like there had to be some sort of outlet, a creative outlet, or really like a transition in practice. So I quit my job, and then I joined an incubator at the New Museum called New Ink, and that is where a lot of new media practitioners and artists, technologists come together to breed their practice and to evolve their practice. And it had really never been in a space like that where there's just so many incredible people that are in this kind of same strange intersection you are. So to me, that was the beginning of my art practice, where I felt like, if I wasn't able to tell my grandmother's story or even see her stories reflected in the spaces I was designing for, that my practice would be a way to, usher that message to the world in a different way, and in a more meaningful way. And so that's where my art practice began. I kind of felt like, I understood what it meant to design narratives for museums, but I'm like, okay, what does it mean to start to exhibit in them? And it's a different, definitely a different angle. A lot of people are saying, they say like, oh, art and design, they're not that different. But I'm like, oh no, it's super different, so different. And that's the beauty of it, kind of the two poles, I'd say.
Let's talk a little bit about your art practice, because I'm someone who still struggles to use Photoshop, whereas you're like in this futuristic, like, you almost seem like, when I see some of your work, you almost seem like you're speaking from like the future. Because and I know you've always been very interested in technology and like the digital space. Like, can you talk
Yeah.
a little bit about that and how that's evolved into the work you make today?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you. Those very kind words. Also, I don't, necessarily believe it's about the technology or the program itself. And that I think the creative practice really transcends those things. And I think inherently that's what makes both of your practices and both of your works resonate with people, is because there's a bit of humanity, a lot of humanity actually in it. So to me, technology is a part of my practice, I'd say, but it's just a means, it's a tool. And the narrative always comes first. And that's really where I think the inspiration from my grandmother brought me to trying different things. Like, I wanted to, for example, find a way back to relating to her, because we're not blood related. And so I tried something when I was at the New Ink, and I was like, oh, maybe I should just send my DNA to a lab and just see what that yields. And I had this is a wonderful lab in Berlin, and they sequenced my DNA, my matrilineal DNA, mitochondrial DNA, and gave me a set of nucleotides back, the ACTGs, and they're like kind of 200 something strings, whatever. And I was like, oh, like, wouldn't it be interesting to have this, be composed into an opera and a song? And so that for the first time I could sonically hear my relationship back to my grandmother, which is a different expression than Ancestry.com or all these different things, where I felt like, just seeing results of like a map was a very cold way to relate to ancestry, whereas like song or like live performance is a completely different way to connect with matrilineage and ancestry, and in this case my grandmother. So then I had an opera singer, Emma Goldberg, who is amazing. So Emma had sung the opera live back to me in a live performance, and now we also do that performance with other people who have sequenced their DNA and whose practices have to do with matrilineage and motherhood as well. And we've dug into their kind of ancestral stories. And so I think this is really important to me, because this piece is not just about any one person's ancestry, but like it is a participatory performance. It's a collaborative performance inherently, because anyone can have their DNA sequenced. And so to me, yes, sure, like the lab is cool and like sequencing the DNA is cool, but what's even cooler is that now I'm able to hear the song of, you know, my mother and her grandmother and all the mothers, you know, before, and that to me was the most interesting part of it all.
So, what are some of the reactions you've seen or heard from other people participating?
Well, we had sequenced this incredible artist. Her name is Annie Liu. And a lot of her work also intersects biodesign, and motherhood is a big part of her practice. And we had sequenced her DNA for a live performance. And before the performance, she had, you know, she had shown up like she showed up a few hours early, which is like, you already know, like, this person has like her life on lock, and like it is very just so in tune, you know, like never had someone show up so early to a rehearsal, that, you know, and so and you know, we had a few moments together, and I was saying, like, you know, Annie, please wait in the other room because we're rehearsing your opera and we don't want you to hear the opera before the audience hears it, you know, with you. And so she's like, okay, like, so she like kind of scurries off. She goes on stage. We have Emma perform her opera to her, and Annie, just tears streaming down her face by the end of it. And I was, you know, it's really it's always unexpected. You know, everyone has a different connection to their ancestry and their mothers and their mothers' mothers. But she had told me like a very personal story about her grandmother after, and you know, just how much the opera expressed a part of their relationship that was really personal to her. And I think that's important, is like that that these pieces, these kind of performances speak to the individual in their own ways. And I think that's the most, you know, you can hope for, because when you put out such strange work, you don't know the reaction, but you can only hope that it has some sort of, you know, personal impact.
So brilliant, from the idea to the execution, and you're such a good storyteller. Yeah, I saw that on your website, and it was so sick.
Thank you. And I can say the same about your work. And, you know,
no, we're talking about Pearlyn. We're not talking about AJ.
We already got your compliments, damn it.
Do you have a musical background? Because a lot of your work, okay, because it seems like you're very interested. You have such an eclectic taste.
Well, you know, yeah, like I played piano because everyone was forced, not everyone. And I did that my whole life, but you know, I was like an awful sight reader, and I never practiced. But there's always something that I'm always fascinated by different modes of creativity, and so like, you know, playing the piano. My favorite moments are actually showing up like 10 minutes before my lesson and just like not practicing, but like going up to a piano and just like banging on it, you know, like just making the most abstract sounds. And I'm stepping on the pedal and like all the sounds are melding together. And I'm like, this is so much cooler than the shit I'm about to do with my teacher. And so I think there's something where like, you know, I took these lessons and I loved my piano teacher. I really didn't like just sitting there, you know, going through the lessons. But I do think that like there is something about kind of turning this pain of like having to do this very like disciplined thing, but making use of it like later in life. And so like this is where I'm like trying to redeem some of that pain into into something that's more enjoyable, which is like you know, having a practice that is kind of on my terms. And so it's I have a general fascination with all different modes, you know, like I really appreciate like various different types of talents. And when someone's so good at something, like, you know, you look at like, I don't know, different illustrators that I met, you know, at Art Center, it's like, wow, like where did you get this genius from? Like, this is just something that's so fascinating to me. And like, what like, was it nature or nurture? Like, what molded you into being able to like craft beautiful narratives, or like like make me cry? Like, how did that happen? And so anyway, I'm just generally, that's a general statement, but like and yeah, fascinated by all these different modes of creativity.
You're someone who is not satisfied with just like being told one way of approaching something. Like, same thing with your piano lessons. If you can't play like the classical way and this disciplined way, there's other methods of making something beautiful. There's other ways to have an experience with that instrument and that music that can be enjoyable to
Yeah.
you, or that can be meaningful to you.
Yeah.
And you're a big risk taker, Pearl. I mean, I want to ask you about that. Like,
Yeah.
even with we didn't talk about the title of that project. The
genetic opera. It's called Reverb. Reverb, a genetic opera, and it's a name that was one of the first times I had to name a project, and yeah, it holds a special place in my heart, even though my musician friends are like, "Oh, it's reverb, it's so basic," the first thing you learn when you like learn music is reverberation. But to me, it's really about that. It's really about resonating to generations, and the double meaning of it. So
sometimes you just gotta go back to the basics, man.
Yeah, the classics.
But it's very thoughtful. I mean, I guess maybe it's basic to a musician, but like, you're putting a lot of thought into this.
Thank you. And that's like the thing is, that's where I find like the most like kind of stimulation is like being able to like think really deeply about the work that I put out in the world, or I try to, rather, because I think there's like there's this kind of idea of like commercial work. You kind of like, you're banging it out and it's like one after another. You don't even have time to think about it, and then it's over. Whereas like I kind of like slow work, and a lot of narrative work is slow because there's a lot of like nuances and complexities, and like the human experience isn't really deeply gray and complex. And so why wouldn't creating the work warrant that same slowness and like that same time to like really click in? So I always try to mirror in the process what the story is trying to do. And I think good work, decent work takes like a good amount of time. And like what my friend likes to call like cook, like the right amount of cook, on because like, is this kind of a brilliant analogy that I steal from her when I go to like university talks, and I'm like and I take credit for it, which is like this idea of like creating work is like baking a cake, and it's first of all, it's baking a layer cake. And so like kind of the beginning of every like piece, there's always some sort of like you're layering concepts, right, to like create something really meaningful. Maybe in the context of like reverb, like for example, it's like it's about matrilineage, but it's also about like ancestry, and like it's about song, and like there's different layers, let's just say. And then you like have to bake said cake, and then you have to also know when the cake is done. So there's like the right amount of cook to work that requires some sort of time, and like kind of this in the same way like an amazing like nonna or grandma or like a mom like cooks like a meal that is like just so heartwarming. It's like there's that special sauce that also goes into baking this layer cake. And anyway, that's just been like my favorite metaphor in my mind. It's like a Neapolitan cake. I don't know why, like just some sort of like layered I don't know, like in and out shake cake. And I don't know why, but but yeah, it's that metaphor has always helped me in like understanding when is a project actually over, because you can kind of keep doing it again and again, or like when you, I guess, like a question to you guys is like, as illustrators, like when do you know when to put down the pen?
It's a deadline.
No, that's so
I love your idea of slow work though, because like, Sally and I were just catching up before you hopped on the call, and we just rifle through everything we were working on and what we've done, and like we've talked about this so much, but we don't look back at it. We just like, it's always on to the next, and it's so exhausting. And there's I do appreciate that you honor your work, where you like take the time to appreciate it, but also take the time to make it.
The thing is with like slow work, and like I try to take more time with my personal pieces that I work on my own. Like AJ doesn't know what I'm working on. Like I'm not gonna, I don't show people until sometimes like if I do post anything, it'll be like a year and a half that I've been, slowly building up to the final piece.
Yeah.
But with slow work and just taking time, it's also a risk, because you don't know how it'll look. You don't know how you'll react to it after like, a year, 2 years of just slowly, because sometimes maybe you're a little too close. Sometimes it could just be your life experience changes or it's not there yet or whatnot. But I mean, I wanted to ask you about that too, in terms of risk taking.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, we've talked a little bit about it before in the past when we, I mean, just freshly graduated. I want to say, like, just talking about being creatively fulfilled. But just because you're creatively fulfilled doesn't mean, you're monetarily stable. And then
Yeah.
even if you don't think about that, just the work itself, if you worked on something for that long and you finally reveal it to a world, that's also a risk,
Yeah.
in terms of how people will receive it or whether people will, acknowledge it at all.
Yeah.
Like that's it's a whole thing. And
Yeah. Yeah.
is that like a little bit second nature to you though, or is that something that you've had to just like?
I've been it's taught by an amazing mentor to really just trust the process and enjoy the process, and that's really the only constant. It's like you taking those like 6 months to a year, being locked in your studio to draw something, to express something. That's pretty much the only guarantee you have. And how can you make that process the most enjoyable for yourself? Because really, that's the heart of the craftsmanship, is making it. And there's nothing that you can't really control how people are going to receive it. And maybe that's not the point. Maybe you're doing this work as like a cathartic process for yourself, because again, like so much of your daily life commercially takes a part of you, right, that like you don't have control over. So like what are the sacred spaces that you give yourself and time really to give yourself that is healing, that is that kind of keeps that like creative fire and integrity in you. It's the process, pretty much. It's doing it. And I don't really think about like, oh, is this going to be like well received? Or I think more about like, as long as I trust the process and I can over time cultivate trust with myself to the work, it's always going to resonate with someone, and it's not going to resonate with everyone. And I think that's, as long as the piece has like a bit of kind of infusion about the human experience, which I think all good narratives have, it's going to resonate with a human, with another human. And so that's kind of how I keep, I guess, concentrated, away from all like the little kind of thoughts that kind of creep up. And of course, I'm not perfect at it. And it's something that I'm like constantly cultivating. But as long as I kind of focus on the work itself, that has always been this like true antidote to like all these like, you know, like moments of doubt I have. It's like, oh, let me just focus back on my practice or focus on, myself. And in that way, I can focus on the narrative that then like resonates back out to people. Yeah, it is risky, but that's kind of really like inherent, I think, to the creative process. Like, I think everyone who is creative is a risk taker. Because we're already kind of like a part of this like theoretical society that has chosen a very different form of expression than the rest of the world, really. And so kind of I just think about like leaning into that, like leaning into the weirdness, leaning into the strangeness, and leaning into your own practice.
Love that.
Yeah, like, I mean, I've said this before. Like, I'm not an artist. I'm not an artist because I love art. Like, that's not the main reason.
Yeah.
I'm an artist because I like to draw and paint. And for me, I mean, I love the process of making the art. And that's what's made it worth the risk.
Yeah.
And in many ways, that's the most real thing. Like, that's the thing I can trust. Like you said, trust the process.
Yeah.
I can trust that I enjoy that the most. And somehow 8-9 years later, I'm still doing this. But what about fear? Not to get too like they're too deep into it, but what about fear versus risk? Like, does that go hand in hand?
I mean, I think that's like the main thing, that is the main enemy of creativity is fear. Again, like your work, this is probably like one of the few professions, right, that you are tied to your work. You're tied to what you output, even if it's commercial, even if it's not just something that you've done on your own time, a part of you is in it. And so over time, I think I am still working on this, but like, how do I cultivate like insulation, like enough like cushion between myself and the work so that I can actually focus on making the work that I mean to make? Kind of like creating the scaffolding around like the doing of it is really important, and it's almost like a mental scaffolding that I try to like kind of implement, which is, I know if I think too much about the fear, the work is going to suffer, and so I care about the work. So if I can just at this moment like kind of put the fear aside, or just kind of think about another aspect to the story, or maybe even fold it into the story, which is one of my favorite tricks, is like, if I fear that there's some sort of like, weird like reception about the work or something, like maybe I can like record myself talking about it and then like fold it back into the soundscape of the work, or something, something like silly like that. But like it's almost like when you like address a crowd and you're really nervous and you say like, hey guys, like, excuse me, I'm like a little bit nervous tonight. And then like the crowd's like supporting you, like it's kind of like dreaming these kind of scenarios to overcome like what is a very human feeling, just to preserve the work as much as possible.
Brilliant.
I think people, they can logically get to that conclusion. I think most people understand that mentally, intellectually, but then it's the emotional aspect, and then also being mentally strong enough to like overcome whatever barriers or obstacles you create for yourself as well.
Yeah.
And obviously, we live in a capitalistic society, so
yeah. One of my favorite things that my therapist have told me, because at one point I was like thinking a lot about like competition and comparison, which is something that crosses like every person's mind, right? It's just something that is like, the pressure of society, the pressure of having a practice, whatever, it creeps up on you. And so she's like, oh, well, like, actually, you're thinking about how we're all like trying to climb up the same ladder. Like, you can imagine a scenario where everyone's climbing up their own ladder. And you're like looking at the neighbor next to you and like rooting them on so that they can climb their ladder, and I thought, like, that's so brilliant. As a way to kind of squash that type of fear, is to encourage others and like lift others up who are like, trying to climb this like crazy, like the ladder is full of spikes. You're like, there's splinters, like everyone is like, trying to like do their best. And I think uplifting community has been my antidote to that, like those crazy thoughts.
That's awesome. I've, I guess it's just an ongoing thing I'm working on as an adult, but like translating envy into pride for other people, just like,
oh, totally.
it's way more, of course, compare everything. Like we all went to this art school that's like top notch. And I'm sure the other school you had after your graduation of, or your post-grad school that you went to, Pearlyn, there was like a lot of maybe competing or just like comparison. It's always better to be supportive than envious. Like, we'll lift each other up.
It's true. It's like it breeds like a certain type of envy, but it also breeds inspiration. Like, it's almost like all this like this it's like, yes, pretty much sides to a coin. And that's tough, to and then I think it's also leads back to like this idea of friendship. It's like you want it's so cool to see your friends succeed because you get to like associate yourself with like such cool, talented people, and then you kind of grow together.
Yeah.
By association. Like that's like the most precious thing, I think.
Yeah. That's what I tell people. The most valuable thing I came out of art school was, or at least art center, was my friendships.
Yeah, absolutely. And people, like all the professors say like, oh yeah, you're gonna like 10 years from now, if you're in a crisis, you're gonna like hit up an old classmate and like from art center.
It's true.
Like, and it's so true.
It's true.
And so many times where like just before a deadline or something, like I will call, a friend up and be like, can you just look at this? Because I'm going crazy. Just look at this. Am I going nuts? And so it's really great to like have people have experienced something similar to you, because it's like you trust that person. And in the same way that like at the crit rail, right? Like you trust the people that have equally like or like even better work than you, because you're like, okay, I know this like comment, this critique is not just critique for critique's sake. It's that because this person cares enough to like give me an honest critique, and I can trust that person because like they also like love good work.
Yeah, that is one of the great things, is that like you find your people and you find your person and your group of peers, and you just don't let go. Just hold on, weather the storm of life.
That's why I'm like, adult friendships are so hard, because I'm like, who can I trust to give me like an honest opinion about like the work,
A little bit more of the practical side. How is, for your work, like putting on gallery shows, like a digital? I know you've done some performance stuff, but you've also shown like videos and digital, and you've like done shows in the digital space, like web and whatnot.
Yes. Yeah.
I feel like when people think of gallery and fine art work, there's still the more of a traditional sense of like physical work and paintings and sculptures and whatnot.
Yeah.
Like, I'm wondering how, for, maybe people are more interested in creating, digital work. What has your experience been like?
Yeah. I always think about how beautiful it is to like return work to the space in which it was created, like isn't it so special to like visit your friend's studio and see like the work in progress, because that's where it was made. So I think it's the same thing with like digital work. It's like so much of my work is rooted in new media or like digital it's a digital medium or media, like to be able to exhibit back in the digital space is actually like very freeing, and also in a way maybe that's how the work was always meant to be seen, and there's just something kind of nice about that. But also, I think like up until a few years ago there was always this question about the white cube and its associations in the art world, like what that means. Is it it's accessible, but to really who? And there is like this beauty about this kind of very democratic space, which is the internet, in which anyone can, from all levels, from all backgrounds, from all walks of life, can just show up and like show their work, without whatever the hairy bureaucracy and all this like red tape of getting into whatever a blue chip gallery, whatever you can name it. But it's really about being able to share your work at the most kind of pure form.
Is it easier to share your work that way just because of the internet? Or is it easier to get grants because maybe it's not as expensive?
I mean, definitely, right? Like it's easier to do it, but it also defies like a cube space in which you can show something. Now you kind of get into the realm of world building around the work, which is usually it's like you just hang up the work and like it's so pristine, it's so beautiful, but isn't that work actually rooted in this like kind of world that you don't see, like this whole narrative and like this whole world that now you can visualize in a digital space, and it goes beyond, it goes to all different planes. You can, in the show that we did on New Art City, it's like you navigate the game kind of like a video game and like with your WASD pad, and like you can like land on someone's work in this world that you wouldn't really have, gone to like maybe necessarily like gone to this space to see. But now I'm like, I've pushed the W so far that I'm just landing in this corner that I'm like, now I'm grappling with the work that is sitting in this corner and like, why is it doing that? And there's something quite beautiful about the kind of open world exploration, if you will, of experiencing work in this way.
I love that there can be more than just, the traditional conventional way of experiencing art, experiencing someone else's creativity. You've done work with virtual reality before, right?
Not VR so much, but I guess in this word that we talk about, which is XR, which the X is a variable for like all the different, types of media, augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality. And so, I don't necessarily believe, again, in like one mode of something. I actually think VR is not necessarily accessible to every person, like everyone. You kind of have to have this, bulky thing, and you have to be able to afford that. And so I really like being able to have work that's very accessible to, people from like all, again, walks of life. And so there is something to be said about like thinking about the medium in which you deliver your work. Like, is it accessible? I've been inspired recently by an incredible artist. Her name is Anna Maria Milan, but she does a lot of like video game engine based work around feminism and like kind of and violence and all these very important topics. And she kind of creates these like very safe spaces for that. But she has vowed that because her work is about like democracy, right, about like disentangling like capitalism and like dismantling these things via video games, she's like, I don't want to make any cent off of my work. And so she's chosen to not sell her work because that would actually go against all the different kind of institutions that like she critiques in her work. And so there's like, I think that to the very like extent, I mean, this is also like a luxury. Like she also has to like make up for that by like teaching and like doing a lot of different like, jobs around the world. But I just love the fact that like she takes it that far to like how she runs her practice transactionally. That's like full embodiment. And so I've always been really inspired by, kind of models like that, where like you're breaking the very kind of last step, like it's, whether you're like breaking the space or like you're not showing it in a conventional space, maybe you're showing in like, I don't know, a bathroom, a basement, whatever, or online. And then there's like the other part where it's like you are choosing to like not sell the work, or you only deliver the work in a very specific way. Like I was thinking about like when I upcoming piece is Infinite Mother, where it's like a video game film about the mother wound, but I was like, oh, what if it's only collectible by like having like by like Xbox Live, like you have to like play the play the game or be like immersed in the game, or it's just like a URL which like you can drop in and you can like see the world and like experience, so anyone can experience the world. It's almost like the mode of delivery is so important to the work as well. And so like I think that's just as important as like the narrative itself. Like every kind of step needs to be like kind of thought through.
No, I love that. Just like the thought and the care put into not only thinking about the work you make, but how people are able to access it and, experience it. And that's definitely something I don't put enough thought into, or any thought into sometimes when I'm making my own work, because I can get, like you said, sometimes the risk of being too in my head and just so focused on making the creative piece. But I think that it's also very, important to think about the audience and how
Yeah.
people receive the work, and if they're able to have the space and time to think about that. And that is something that like I think is a through line how you've approached art, collaboration, humanity, lived experience.
Yeah, it's.
Yeah.
I think it's important to think about like, the narrative of the work, like who is, I guess, which like the protagonists or like the characters in the story, like who are you representing? And if those, same types of archetypes of people that are looking at the work that can access that your narrative that you're writing about these people, like it's that kind of it's ironic. It's like you're only now making work that like then becomes more and more inaccessible because and sometimes you want to ascend in like the art world, however that means to you, but it's almost like not forgetting about like where you came from, but also where your work is inspired by, or like who they're inspired by. Almost like that's to me is really important.
I think this is a good place to wrap up, unless AJ you have some other questions, because we
I
have
just have
some
a
rapid
comment.
fire.
I think like
Oh.
I think our listeners need to, tap in and see all the stuff, because not only are you brilliantly concepting all this stuff, but the execution is insane. It's so sick. Like reverb. I mean, everything you were talking about, because you were talking about VR and AR and all that. And I was looking at your other projects like Real Girlfriend and Infinite Mother. Like the concept stills from that are so beautiful.
Yeah, go check out Pearlyn's work. She's not someone that's afraid to like dive headfirst into like the unknown.
I was telling Sally before you hopped on, I was like, when I think of Pearlyn's work, I'm like, that's the future. Like we're looking at the future, and it's so sick.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think this podcast is also brilliant because, like you're saying, like you get to learn about like various different friends in a different way.
Yeah, we never talk like this.
Yeah.
Casually.
Yeah, I mean, it would be awkward to talk like this in a cafe, but like it's super cool to do this like in this format, in this context. So it's a brilliant
we want to get to know you guys. So
yeah,
that's why we do it.
Well, thank you so much. This was awesome.
Yeah.
Wait. We got some rapid fire. We got some rapid fire questions.
Okay. Yeah.
We're not going to just end it like that.
No. Every podcast, yes, has a rapid five. So I'm here for it.
Hit it, Sally.
you're still in New York, but you used to be in based in LA. So I mean, very basic. Like, what do you like to eat? What would you recommend
Oh my god.
in LA versus New York? And also,
Wow.
which place is better? Just to for food,
Dang.
just to
Wow.
stir up a little
Wow,
bit
that's
of.
like that's very contentious. I would what do I like to eat? Well, I would say I just love like a very simple congee, just like really good freaking Cantonese food. Sally knows really well. Just like a good like peitan sayocho, honestly.
Oh, look at that.
Just good congee. That is always something where I'm like, I'm sad about, like, I don't know, just something that's not going well in my practice, whatever. I'm like, I can just go get congee and I know I'll feel better.
Nice.
And more inspired. Which coast is better? I don't know. That's what, like some friends that are that want to do like a bi-coastal life, like I get it, because it's kind of like you get the best of both worlds. I will say the food in LA is better though. If I really had to put my foot down. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. I really said something that I don't know, maybe we'll get canceled for it.
We'll add the gunshots.
It's okay. Yeah, it's okay. People will be mad, but it's only because we're right. So
yeah, that's just growing up, having spent more time in LA than New York. It's I'm sorry, I'm very biased. You're asking a very biased person.
Yeah, I mean, New York does have good food, and to be fair, I haven't been in New York as many times, but you got to represent West Coast.
Yeah.
All right, I got one for you, Pearlyn.
Yeah.
I would like to know, what are 3 albums? I've seen some of the stuff that it seems like you're very inclined to. You just love music, and like I saw the Brian Eno project, and you have opera in a piece of work you were telling us about earlier. What are 3 albums that would give someone a taste of what your taste in music is?
Oh wow. Okay. Well, Sally and I share a love for Utada Hikaru, so obviously science fiction, which like it would be such a dream job to be able to like create just like a world for her.
Nice.
At one point, that would be so cool. And she's also just someone that has been like a internal kind of creative muse in my life. Exactly. She's such an icon. She's so humble. Or sorry, they're so humble, and like they never had to, I think, associate themselves with J-pop like as a genre. Like they've always been very genre defying, or kind of just making work for the sake of making work. And anyway, beautiful, like just kind of all around. Honestly, every album is great.
Nice.
But I did receive a science fiction record from Beverly, who's our good friend.
Beverly Chen,
my best friend, yeah. And she got me the record from Japan, and I
Dang.
have been, I know, I was like, wow, that's such a thoughtful gift. And
Shout out Bev.
Shout out Bev. Music for Airports is an incredible album by Brian Eno, and to think a lot of actually just him kind of as just like a hyper disciplinarian, like I would say, like he just does kind of dips his like finger, like toes into like many different types of like creative kind of ventures. And then what's more interesting is like when you listen kind of to his music, there is some sort of like you can hear the space in which the music represents. The sound is spatial, which is very, I think, always really cool to do. And then I don't know about a third album, but I think those would be like definitely top 2.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well done.
Well, just to wrap it all up, I have a little story. It was gonna be a question, but I have a little it's more of a quick story. Since you mentioned the great Utada Hikaru, so Art Center used, I don't know about now, but we always used to hang out in the cafeteria, and I think it's actually one of like the best ways for different majors to get to know each other, and that's how I got to know Pearl really well. It's just hang out at the cafeteria, like many times it would just be like a table, and just whoever even kind of knew one another would just sit next to each other and just work, sometimes for like a few hours, sometimes for 10 minutes and whatnot. So I remember this one specific moment, and it was just me and Pearl sitting next to each other with our laptops. And Pearl was working like the disciplined person she is. And I was procrastinating. I don't know what I was scrolling through. I saw that Utada had released a song or something. I don't know what. I don't quite remember what. I looked over at Pearl, who was sitting next to me, and I was like, Pearl? And you're like, uh-huh. I'm like, do you know who Utada Hikaru is? And you, without missing a beat, your eyes still on your laptop, you went, she's my favorite artist of all time. And then you just kept working. And I was like,
oh no.
I mean, I, like in that moment, I was like, oh, I used to really like Pearl. Now I love Pearl.
Oh man.
Yeah, like the fact that you didn't even say musician, the fact that you didn't even say you said she's my favorite artist of all time. I'm like, Pearl gets it.
Yeah,
Pearl gets it.
Oh my god, it's really brave. I just think it's so brave what they've done, like in their, again, this like kind of genre defying, like I'm gonna do my own thing. Mm-hmm. And like the rest of the world will follow. Like that is like, and like especially like in an industry that's so it can contort you in like to doing different things, and then they're like, I don't care. I'm gonna do this. And so anyway, the moment I like hear someone likes them, I'm like, friends, right? Like game over.
Mm-hmm. That's what I see in your work, though. What you admire in that artist is what I see with you too. It's like, oh my God, you're forging your own path, and that's pretty inspiring.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, and the fact that like they came out as like non-binary. Like I sometimes say she because I just see on the Instagram thing she posts like she they. So I'm like, okay, and I switch back and forth just because, like, also it's a little bit out of habit because we've been listening to them for like over a decade, so it's been like
through their whole evolution.
But we know, just don't want to put it out there, like we know. And we respect it. But yeah, it's just like I could keep talking more and more and on about it, but
hey, we started with friendship and we ended with how you guys became even better friends. So that's pretty sick.
How you and I are friends.
Yeah, new friends, dude.
Yeah. Wait, really quickly, like people can find Pearl's work on her website, Instagram, or is there any like I don't know.
That's good.
That's
Instagram and web. Yeah, the good old things.
Yeah, do you have anything to plug? Anything you want to let the people know?
Oh wow. I guess Infinite Mother, that just premiered, the second episode of that just premiered this past weekend. And I'm gonna put that up soon on the site. So yeah, that's all.
Okay, awesome.
Wow. Thank you so much. It was so fun.
Yay!
Congrats on episode 2.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just think, ding, ding, bing, ding, 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 whatever the beat is that keys me.
That's a very accurate recreation of our theme song. But okay, well, there you have it. There you have it.
With your voice all cracking.
Okay, well,
3,
that was Pearlyn Lii.
Oh.
Okay, no, we're keeping that in. Okay. I hope that conversation with Pearl was as uplifting for you as it was for me. I was re-listening to our conversation just a few days ago, and I, was getting really encouraged and just rejuvenated all over again. Her energy is definitely infectious, and she's someone who really makes you believe in yourself.
Definitely. Pearlyn is such an inspiration. And after talking to her, I definitely felt like I needed to get to work and let my creative juices start flowing. With that, let's go to our next segment because we got questions.
Woohoo!
uh, two questions today. And the first one is from John, our good friend, photographer, painter extraordinaire. He asks, "How in control of your career/life do you feel?" I'll let you answer that one first.
Is this from a 1 to 10 scale, or like how are we doing this?
You could do if you want to structure your answer that way. That sounds great.
I mean, the easiest, like my immediate answer was just no.
That's fair.
There
That's
was
fair.
like, I mean, there's no even like scale. It's just, I don't know. For me, I feel like I've always just gone like went like on with the flow
Yeah.
with a lot of things. I mean, we're both illustrators, so there's only like freelance illustrators. You can only have so much control career
Mm-hmm.
wise, especially with how everything is rapidly changing these days.
Yeah.
Um yeah, I don't know. I can only focus on the work and try to make as much sincere and honest work as possible. And maybe that's not the best. I mean, well, this isn't asking for advice. It's just how I feel. So don't take this as an advice because I'm not the greatest business person. So we actually since we'd already talked about Utada with Pearl just now at the end there. One quote both Pearlyn and I really like from her from them is that when they were asked about this question of like how did they view their career, like where do you want to bring your career to, or how do they see them in the future, their answer was they don't really have control in that sense or view their career in that way
Mm-hmm.
because they're an artist. And her idea of what an artist should do is to live life honestly and be sincere and be honest in their expression. And that's all they can do. And
Mm-hmm.
that is kind of all I can do, because career/life, I'm an artist, I'm a creative. I can only be honest with my experience. So,
Well
no
said.
control. Do you have something more practical? A more practical reason
Well,
or
I think
advice or
it's very
feeling?
those are there's I just feel like they're related but also super different if you consider like your life versus your career. I mean, with an artist, the lines are so blurred. You can make choices in your life, and to a certain extent, you can try and control certain outcomes, but you don't know what's going to happen. So many things, especially. Um, I mean, I'm jumping back and forth, but with a career, it's like it's all chance. Like, there's so much that goes on that's beyond your control that if you try and grasp every section of whatever your career, like it's impossible. I just don't think it's I don't I at least that's how I view it. Of course you can like work super hard and put yourself in the best position and meet the best people for certain things and go out and network or whatever, but I don't know. I never my career hasn't panned out in that way. It always feels random and it always feels like it came by through chance and relationships. I can't
Yeah,
say that I
it's
controlled anything, you know?
yeah. I don't think I could have predicted, what I'm doing now when I graduate. If you had asked me when I just graduated, like where I think or want my career to be. Like I wanted to be successful. That's the most obvious thing. I wanted to be happy. But I think
Mm-hmm.
with these things, the more control you try to have, the more it's just gonna like the more like I don't know, the visuals of it just like trying to, what is it? Grasp water or hold on to
Yeah.
water.
Yeah.
I don't know. So yeah,
Holding
no
on to
control.
sand. Is there a sand
Sand?
metaphor in there? Yeah.
Sure.
I guess you can just like, if we're gonna, use an analogy or something. It's like you are a ship and you can kind of like steer it and point it in a certain direction, but the wind's gonna take you where it takes you, and you just have to be open to whatever comes. This is a sailing podcast, by the way.
Cool. Of course.
Mm-hmm.
Water.
Waterman.
Water. Bruce
Water.
Lee. Be like water.
Be like water. All right.
Anyway, great
There's
answer.
this. I don't know if we answered anything. There's a second question from Claire.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on the impact of social media presidents? Oh my god.
Present.
You take the you let's cut there
No.
and you take the Claire question because that was fucked.
Okay. So Claire asked, what are your thoughts on the impact of having a social media presence or something like that, I'm guessing. She also followed up with, is it beneficial to be active on Twitter or have it Behance or any kind of platform? So this is asking for more practical advice for being a freelance illustrator. I don't know. Okay. I guess yes. I would say social media is important, but it feels like depending on the industry you're in, different platforms, like they're not all equal, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
She mentioned for the gaming industry, Twitter is more important. Just like the other day, she messaged me like that she got an inquiry from someone and they found out about her through like a portfolio. Yeah, it's a showcase on Twitter. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I would have I don't ever use Twitter, so there's that. I mainly use Instagram, and I think I've mentioned to you and some of our other friends that I feel like art directors still find me somehow on Instagram. Like if it's someone I've never worked with before, they will reference some recent pieces they found on my Instagram that I actually didn't post on my website yet. So yeah, I know Instagram is, supposedly not as useful as a couple years ago and it's dying and all that, but people are still finding me on Instagram somehow or for some
Hmm.
reason. So yeah, so
That's
that's my
great.
2 cents. Yeah, I've never used Behance. Or no,
Yeah.
actually I have a portfolio thing that I set up like a long time ago, but I've never used it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think I have Behance. I don't think I have LinkedIn. Um, I'm like the worst person to ask about this question. But yeah, social media, I think at least any sort of presence online is important just so people are aware of you, which is tough because like it would be nice to unplug and just not be connected at all. And dude, it's been so bad like for me personally just always looking at my phone. I hate it so much. And I'll catch myself but it's like, I'll make that excuse and be like, oh, it's part of my career, like I need to be on this, but I don't need to be on it. I don't need to be in the middle of dinner like looking, scrolling and all that. But
Yeah, it's
yeah,
actually
just
kind of funny because I remember you would say you're deleting your Instagram or just like momentarily to not be distracted while you work. And then I'll see you on the app and like liking things like immediately.
oh, I do it every day. Like I delete it when I work, and then like bathroom break, download it, or like lunch break, download it. It's awful. Um, yeah, but like career wise, it's been helpful. It's just nice for someone to see uh your work, obviously. Um, the amount of exposure you want to give about yourself is up to you. I think I had someone ask me this question recently. I did like
Yeah.
a talk with our old friend Estella. She was doing a like
Hmm.
animation, women in animation sort of uh, class, and obviously I'm the perfect person to join in on that. Um, Someone asked about social media and like how important it is, and I just said, it's good to have a presence and like have a place for people to find you. You could honestly just have a website, but it would be a lot harder for you
Yeah,
to
it's
be
just whatever's
visible.
convenient for people because everyone, I don't know, procrastinates.
Yeah, for sure.
but I mean, honestly, if it weren't for my illustration career, like I doubt I would be on Instagram that much. Like I don't like looking, at my phone too much. It's like, but that's just me being like a luddite and just and
No,
like
we need more Luddites.
but I
It's
mean,
pretty bad.
okay, so also like the one good thing though, with social media is that it allows me to connect with people I wouldn't meet in person otherwise, because there has been like illustrators or just um people who admire my work reached out and just they've surprisingly been following my stuff for like years,
Yeah.
and it's kind of crazy and wild to think about that. And once in a while, they'll like send a message, like a very supportive message, and just or a really nice comment, and I'm like, oh, I recognize you, like that's really cool. So that's really nice, I will say.
Yeah. I agree. I think like as illustrators, that is our community. Like that's how you can maintain friendships with people that are in Europe or like in New York or in the Midwest, whatever, wherever. People I've never met before, and I have so many friends on Instagram that uh, are strangers, but we've become close because I admire their work, and I'm just a fan of so many people. Um, and it's cool to get to know people via social media, and it does feel supportive and like there's a community. Um, but yeah, that's definitely the bright side of social media, and I would say it's for this career choice, it's kind of essential. It would be really hard to go without it.
Yeah, I would say if
Thanks, Claire.
if nothing else, yeah, just thanks, Claire. Even though she wasn't asking about about that part of social media specifically, but I think it's important to think of like the pros of that part because if you just reduce it to like networking and whatnot, then for me anyway, it can feel like I would not be using Instagram as much, if it was just to further career or network. I have to think about the human aspect and the community aspect of it.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. I agree. I hate that word so much.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's end that then on such a happy note.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Claire. You guys are awesome.
Do we want to ask
Uh,
people to email us more questions?
yeah. So yeah, thank you, John. Thank you, Claire. Great questions. And if you have any more, this is open to anyone. Obviously, comments, questions, concerns, guest suggestions, art directors' emails, job opportunities, spam, or scams, email us at pleinairpodcast@gmail.com. One more time, pleinairpodcast@gmail.com. And we'll try to answer you at the end of each episode.
And as always, thanks to the PA boys, Fernie, Keith, and John for the music. And a big help to my little brother, again, who just helped us out with audio issues, Vincent Deng. Thank you.
You're the best, Vincent. Thank you.
And this episode was brought to you by... Who the fuck cares? Right? I don't know. Was that too aggressive?
No, that's perfect. Bye.
Bye.